that. I'll let some of the attendees join. Thank you for joining us, and we will start in a few minutes. I'm just going to set up a video of His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Republic of Iraq, to give a message to the event. Right. I have it as afternoon here in London and in Iraq, so I'll say good afternoon to the panelists and to members of the audience in this meeting, and also our followers on YouTube. This is the seventh event of this series of events on reviving the spirit of Mosul. That is part of the London Festival of Architecture. The events are organized by the Al-Kindi Society of Engineers with support from the Iraqi Embassy in London and UNESCO. And yesterday we were grateful to host the 5 winning teams and the runner-up teams from the international competition that UNESCO held for the Grand Al Nouri Mosque complex that you see in the background behind me. So today we would have presentations from 2 esteemed colleagues at UNESCO, and they will talk about the Grand Al Nouri Mosque competition. They will talk about the historical houses, the churches that are being rebuilt, as well as give us an overview of the initiative by UNESCO, Revive the Spirit of Mosul, which is generously funded by the United Arab Emirates, and some of the work is also funded by the European Union. More details on that will be coming from our colleagues at UNESCO. Members of the audience can raise questions using the question and answer facility that we have in this meeting. And colleagues who wish to talk directly and raise their question, please raise your hand and we will give you the access to the microphone. With that, I would like to share the presentation, the speech by His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Republic of Iraq in London.
السيدات والسادة الحضور، تحية طيبة. في البدء أشكركم جميعا على وجودكم هنا اليوم بعد 4 سنوات من تدمير الموصل. كما تعلمون فإن تراث الموصل وجزء من تاريخ العالم بأسره. من خلال العمل معا يمكننا ضمان الحفاظ على التراث والتاريخ. أود أن أتقدم بالشكر لجميع المشاركين والمتسابقين والفائزين. لقد كان من المهم أن نرى الكثير من الاهتمام والدعم لهذا المشروع من اليونسكو والدول الداعمة للمشروع. سيداتي وسادتي، كلمة الموصل تعني نقطة الربط باللغة العربية، فهي تربط بين الشرق والغرب. لقد كانت الموصل على طول التاريخ مركزاً للتفاعل الاقتصادي والثقافي والسياسي والديني، ونحن هنا اليوم مع الأطراف الداعمة في عرض عملية استعادة وإنعاش إحدى المدن العراقية العريقة. إعادة بناء مجمع مسجد النور هو البداية والرسالة القوية، ليس فقط بسبب تاريخ هذا المسجد، ولكن أيضاً بسبب ظروف تدميره ومستقبله. إن إعادة الإعمار جزء مهم من قصة العراق الحديث. أود أن أشكر جميع المشاركين والمتسابقين، وأخص بالذكر والشكر الفائزين. ختاماً، تضاءلت روح الموصل إلى حد ما خلال السنوات المؤلمة الماضية، ولكن معاً يمكننا إحياء روح التعايش السلمي في الموصل وخارجها. شكراً لكم على جهودكم.
Thank you very much. And with that, I hand over to the first speaker. Nuria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the attendees for being here with us today. Well, as you very well said, we will be speaking about the initiative Revive the Spirit of Mosul here today. And in particular, I will be speaking about the UAE-funded project within this initiative. So I'm going to share my screen, hoping it will work. Yeah, can you confirm that you can all see my screen?
We can see it. If you
Fantastic.
don't mind just making it full screen, perfect.
Yes, great. Okay, very good. Well, there have been several webinars already in this series that spoke about this, but just to kind of put everybody on the same page. The UNESCO initiative Revive the Spirit of Mosul was launched in 2018 by our Director General. It basically has three pillars. One is concerns heritage, meaning the physical reconstruction and rehabilitation of cities' heritage sites. A second pillar which focuses on education, and a third pillar that intends wants to revitalize Mosul cultural and intellectual life. The project I'll be speaking about today is one of the projects within this initiative. It's funded by the United Arab Emirates and mostly falls under the first pillar, heritage, of these three pillars of the initiative. Later on, my colleague Gemma will speak about another project that is also which also falls under the initiative, Revive the Spirit of Mosul, but that is funded by the European Union, and it's different from this one. So just to clarify that there are several projects within this Revive the Spirit of Mosul. Now, as I said, the project I'll be talking about is the UAE funded project, which is entitled Reviving the Spirit of Mosul by Rebuilding its Monumental Landmarks. Why? Well, because this project basically aims at rebuilding and rehabilitating three landmarks in the city of Mosul: the Al Nouri complex, the Al Tahira Syria Catholic Church, and the conventual church of Our Lady of the Hour. It basically has two objectives, or we aim at two outcomes. The first outcome concerns the actual rehabilitation and reconstruction of historical spaces, meaning the physical reconstruction, and how this physical reconstruction um, can lead to reviving the cultural diversity of Mosul, both in terms of human fabric and cultural heritage. And a second outcome that looks into the skills development and employment opportunities that the physical reconstruction and rehabilitation can lead to. Just to maybe give the audience, in case some didn't see it before, one of how did the Al Nuri complex look before its destruction in 2017, and how the Al Hadba minaret looked before same date. As you can see, destruction was pretty strong. You can see the prayer hall on the left of your screen. I would like to note here that this prayer hall you see on the picture, upper left, is a prayer hall from 1944. So the complex per se and the minaret are much older than that, but the building that we see in the image was completely built in 1944. And then unfortunately distracted in 2017. On the right, you can see the minaret, a very beautiful picture of the minaret, and the devastating image of the aftermath of the explosion in 2017. So I will start by looking into the first of our important sites, which I already did a little bit with the latest slide, the Al Nuri complex. The project for Al Nuri complex, but also for the two other sites, the two churches, was always articulated in two phases. A first phase that basically looks into or aims at securing the site, and then a second phase that deals with the actual design and reconstruction, rehabilitation of the site. Now, what do I mean by phase one, securing the site? Well, that means cleaning from unexplosive devices, rubber removal, and temporary stabilization measures. And of course, this first phase is very, very much important. For the Al Nuri complex, and as you can see, the images I think speak by themselves. The damage was pretty strong. It was though very complicated, to undertake phase one, and this phase one, this securing the site, had to be done in sub phases. What does that mean? Well, it means that the rubble removal had to be combined with the stabilization measures, or had to happen in parallel. As you can see there, the dome was pretty damaged, and in the image you can see the executive design of the wooden pillars that were designed to stabilize and to do temporary stabilization measures to the dome. For us, it has been always very important to encourage job creation and to involve as much as possible local professionals, artisans, and workers. And in fact, these huge wooden pillars were fully done by local carpenters and woodworkers. And I have to say that it was a very complex job, but they were extremely talented and successful in it. Along the same lines, we also work on daily basis with the different local governmental stakeholders, and especially the State Board of Antiquities and Heritage. You can see here some of its staff. The SBAH, the State Board of Antiquities and Heritage, kindly deployed highly qualified professionals to the Al Nuri complex, and they conducted, they did a great job in the screening the different fragments, assessing the historical value, and cataloging these fragments. Of course, the fragments that were recovered from the rubble, etc. And you can see in the images our storage space that was well, is a temporary structure built within the complex to host all these fragments. And of course, this is a very important step for the next phases of the project, indeed. The result, well, the result, you can see it on the picture. I think the image is quite clear. If we compare it with the first image I showed you of the aftermath of the destruction. Now I'm going to just maybe explain quickly what are the different areas of this complex, and how are we planning to move forward. So this part you can see now highlighted on the screen. This is the what we could call the historical perimeter of the Al Nuri complex, or the original perimeter of the Al Nuri complex. And with the dotted line, we are marking the enlarged area of work, which is now the one that that concerns us, or concerns our work. In the northern part of the complex, and highlighted in blue, those are some houses that are meant to be residential houses that are currently included in a tender package that went out together with other works in the context of the rehabilitation of other historical houses in Mosul, which falls under the EU-funded project that Gemma will cover later on. Those are houses that will be most likely used by the staff working in the complex. Highlighted in orange, I would say that's orange. That's the Al-Atba minaret that we will cover shortly. The part that is still in white, that's the expansion area, which is currently being under, well, for which the SUNY endowment is completing a plan of acquisition. This enlarged area of work, or this extension area, was at the beginning of the 20th century, was a beautiful neighborhood, but unfortunately these houses were mostly demolished, and only few are standing, and it was converted, it was made a parking lot after right before the destruction in 2017. That was a parking lot. So as I said, let's cover now the minaret quickly. I know I'm taking a lot of time, so sorry. But I will try to give you the most important highlights on the minaret. On the left side of the image, you can see how the minaret looks now after all the phase one is completed. Of course, now the minaret is fully accessible also from inside, but I want to highlight the fact that the rubble removal and temporary stabilization was really complex for the minaret, because of course the minaret already before 2017 was in a severe condition of structural instability. And of course, plainly said, after the events of 2017, that made it worse, not better, obviously. But through consultation processes, it was decided that the minaret should be rebuilt how it was and where it was. So that led UNESCO to conduct structural and geotechnical investigations, which are obviously critical to understand what is the status of the base, and therefore understand or have the tools to design and rebuild the best possible way. So what were those investigation and geotechnical investigations and structural investigations? Well, first of all, a monitoring system was installed, and you can see some images on the right side of the screen. Here are some, I'm gonna go through these a bit quick, but we can share the presentation later if anyone is interested. Those are some of the graphs coming out from the monitoring system, which basically monitors the movement of the minaret. And I'm happy to say that since November, when we installed the minaret, it seems that the minaret is stable, and there are no major incidents or movements. The second step of the second phase of this investigation included horizontal core drillings, which are done to characterize the masonry stratigraphy. And you can see here some images of the process. And some of the results here, you can see on the image in the left where that the core drilling was done at different levels to better understand the masonry throughout the base. And here, quickly, I'm sorry that I'm not maybe going into much detail, but just to give an idea of what we're doing. These are some of the results. It's a diagram reporting the differences in terms of materials that were extracted during the core drilling. And the third phase of these investigations was to conduct direct investigations, because UNESCO, through also desk review and consultation with local experts, we were aware that there were some interventions done, especially in the 20th century, by different teams, but especially the Italian team of Fondebile. And the only way to understand what was done was to conduct the direct investigations. Here on the left, you can see one of the drawings of the plan for that intervention led by Professor Fondebile in the 80s. And on the left side, you can see a picture of what has been found in the archaeological excavation, these direct investigations that are ongoing as we speak. You can see in the image that there were some micropiles placed in each of the sides of the minaret, except I have to mention here the eastern side, there are no piles there. But for the rest, of course, this was meant to stabilize the minaret because it was already leaning at that time. And finally, just to mention that we have also conducted geophysical and soil investigations, which are obviously also very important to understand the status of the remains, and of course lead us to the design of the reconstruction strategy and the reconstruction strategy. As I said, same procedure, same phasing is undertaken also for the churches. Here are some images of the Al-Tahira church, where you can see the level of damages. Here are some images of the architectural design, and here. Good. Of course, it's also important for us to especially create a focus on job creation, but also on training and coaching. And we prioritize, of course, consultation and coordination with different stakeholders. And we tried as much as possible, and this webinar is an example, to communicate and raise awareness about the project and its importance. We have mostly two mechanisms for consultation, or main mechanisms of consultation officially. The so-called Joint Technical Committee, which happens at the national level and is attended by Moslawis and Iraqis, different experts in the fields of engineer, architecture, representatives from the local community, University of Mosul, and also governmental and governmental institutions. And then the Joint Steering Committee, which is the a higher committee, which is the decision-making body of the project, which includes the different ministers of not only the donor, but of course the Ministry of Culture and the president of the Sunni endowments, among others, as well as Christian endowment and the Dominican order for the churches. These mechanisms happen also in parallel to direct and daily almost meetings with the different stakeholders, because, for example, meetings with the State Board of Antiquities, which operates under the Ministry of Culture, happen very regularly at the technical level between UNESCO and the team working in the field. We also, as I mentioned before, we do have a very strong commitment to create jobs for Moslawis. And I have to mention that besides myself and two more colleagues, I would say the rest of our team is all Iraqi, not only at the level of UNESCO staff, but also throughout the different stakeholders and companies that participate in the project. So we only have 3 non-Iraqis in the team. And we have created so far 600 jobs, over 600 jobs, while our target is to reach 1,000 jobs created by 2023. So I think we are in good track on this one. Not only that, as I said, not only job creation is important for us, but also training, coaching, and on-the-job training. And on this topic, I would like to highlight a young professionals program for reconstruction and rehabilitation of post-conflict build heritage in post-conflict context, that will be launched very soon in the framework of this project in partnership with ICROM. This is a 2 years program with 2 tracks, one that targets professionals and another one that targets rather artisans and handicrafts. And on this, maybe Gemma can also elaborate, because it's a cross-cutting program of the initiative and not only the UAE funded project. And so that's it from my side. And of course, I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you, Nuria, for this presentation. And if you don't mind, we'll take the questions at the end after Gemma has also presented. I noticed that you've touched on this interesting training program, and I hope Gemma can expand a little bit on that. With that, Gemma, the floor is yours.
Good morning or afternoon from Iraq. Can everyone hear me and see the screen well?
Yes, please go ahead.
Super. Okay, so my name is Gemma Houston, and I'm the architect project manager working on historical houses, some palatial houses, a child-friendly school, and we have another mosque called Agawat in Mosul Old City. So as Nuria mentioned, this is also part of the Reviving the Spirit of Mosul initiative, but I also work on the Reviving Mosul and Basra project, which is, so it's funded by the European Union. So I'll speak specifically about the reconstruction effort that we have ongoing in Mosul at this moment. So the overall objective of this project is really to contribute to economic recovery, essentially through job creation as well, skills development, and training for vulnerable youth in heritage reconstruction. So to give you a background and to show you the context, really between 2014 and 2017 was one of the largest urban battles probably since the Second World War that took place in Mosul. And this resulted in mass destruction, affecting around 80% of the city's physical infrastructure, and estimated around 5,000 buildings in the old city of Mosul were completely leveled or severely damaged. So that meant there was a significant loss of integrity within the historic core. However, there is still much remaining in which to rebuild, and we want to preserve the integrity and historic character. The old city of Mosul is actually on the tentative World Heritage List as well, so we also want to preserve that character as much as possible. We initially started with a detailed analysis of the old city to start to understand the architectural features and characteristics of the houses specifically. So the study revealed that most of these houses we're looking at date back to the early 18th century. However, recently we actually did find a stone integrated within one of the houses from the Atabeg period. So that's quite interesting. So the houses reflect a lot of characteristics of Islamic architecture, which really respond to climatic conditions, social requirements, religious principles, and economic conditions. The study reveals a lot of hidden features and highly decorative elements and features that were inherent in Mosul. So one of the main features that we are looking at is the use of alabaster marble, which is used to frame various elements such as doors and windows, etc. So you can see the level of density and destruction from the picture on your screen. So with a better understanding of these architectural features, we started to think about where it was within the old city itself that we would work. So we decided to start with the area surrounding the Al Nuri complex, in which we would really refer to this as maybe an area of like a super block, for example. So this is the Al Nuri complex is in red, and all of the blue is our current first phase of our project of 44 houses, with an expansion coming in the next few weeks that will continue on in a more heritage route. So it's important to say this is not a shelter project, but a development project that is quite unique to UNESCO, as we're actually reconstructing the entire house, unlike other agencies who are working on core shelter. So it's also important to mention that we're not just looking at the historical house itself, but we're also upgrading the infrastructure around the house. So we're looking at the water network, the electricity network, the sewage, the drainage, the paving and lighting. So it's not just the houses themselves. So we face quite a lot of challenges with regards to the sheer amount of destruction and rubble. And, what we obviously, we find, unfortunately, unexploded ordnances. We at times find IEDs. And unfortunately, morbidly, we do find occasionally some bodies amongst the rubble. And this all has to be cleared. And in some circumstances, even some of the roads need to be cleared before we can even get in to do any assessments. So this picture shows you the level of density that we're dealing with, but it's important really to understand, firstly, that every site has a unique set of circumstances, and our approach at UNESCO for the houses is very much tailored to the individual needs of each. The work is complex in terms of the level of damage, and it's not just the damage that's been done as a result of the conflict, but it's also the degradation of the buildings themselves. So the high density obviously is an issue. We are using construction techniques as well to match the old, but have in some ways been forgotten about for generations. We also have modern interventions that have been knitted in as well. And in some instances, we have to rehabilitate when people are living in the house, or we have to relocate some residents due to risk of building collapse. So as you can imagine, it's quite a challenge. So moving on, we start to, once the buildings are clear, we can then safely get in to do our detailed assessment and analysis, in which we start to categorize each of the historical houses into a damage. We associate with a damage category. So we'll reconstruct in most cases, unless the house is either completely eroded or completely missing. So most of these houses surrounding the Al Nuri complex are either privately owned, mostly, and some are owned by the Sunni Waqf, some are owned by the Antiquities Board. Each detail of repair is discussed with each owner. So for example, with the homeowners, they also are able to choose various options of historical features and the reintegration. This is also then further discussed at a local technical level with government stakeholders such as the Antiquities Board, Governor's Office, Water, Sewage Department, Electrical Departments, prior to even going to a tender release phase. So we started the construction of the first package of 44 houses back in December 2020, and you can see some of the photographs of the, for example, the old plaster layers being removed, the stone being rebuilt using lime mortar, and some of the domes starting to be reconstructed as well. These pictures show some of the alabaster elements that are quite special for Mosul. And a lot of these elements, unfortunately, over time were covered up or painted. So we're actually revealing a lot of those alabaster components again and celebrating those really unique architectural features. This is simply a photograph of a typical Islamic the typical Islamic architecture, in which everything is based around a courtyard, and most of the houses are quite insular facing, and the external facade, there's not a lot in terms of windows or openings. So this shows some of our team mixing the lime mortar and then redetailing some of the plaster elements. One of the major components for our work as well is the training of youth. So through our Dulce local centre in Mosul, a lot of local youths will undertake a training course in construction skills. Following that, they'll be integrated into our construction sites to rebuild the historical houses. So you can see some of the trainees have been teamed up with specialist craftsmen to understand and undertake the work themselves. You can see on the picture on the right, we have an expert alabaster craftsman who is filling in some of the damaged parts in different stages. So he's teaching some of the local qualified TVET trainees in how to do that. You can also see there's some girls also have, some of the ladies have also undertaken the training course as well, and then they have come on site as well. So our electrical engineer was teaching them how to do some electrical wiring throughout the historical houses. So I think this is a really good photograph to explain what's happening in detail. And again, some more photographs of our TVET trainees hand mixing some of the lime plaster work and learning how to do some welding on site as well. You can see in detail here on the left photograph, this is one of our really nice examples of historical houses that has quite a lot of alabaster marble, and a lot of the TVET graduates are starting to repair in situ. This is a bit different in that it is repair in situ rather than replace. So this again is an interesting challenge that hasn't necessarily come up in construction for Mosul as yet. This kind of shows you a before and after photograph of how the beautiful historic alabaster elements have all been covered up by paint and various bits and pieces and plaster. So the photograph on the right shows after in terms of under construction, and we hope that a lot of this construction will finalize by the end of the year. Again, another before and after photograph where you can see all of the really nice architectural elements had been hidden, and so we have started to reveal them and replaster. Again, another before and after. We also have a couple of palatial houses which are owned by the State Board of Antiquities. So at this stage, they are incredibly large houses that have gone through, again, rubble clearance. They've gone through a stabilization process, but you can still see the level of damage there. And any elements have been catalogued, ready for reintegration again. So those are going through a stage of design at this moment prior to releasing for tender. This is a map of the area we're working in. So you can see the Al Nuri complex on your left. And as we're working in this kind of super block approach, the first 44 houses that surround the mosque, and everything in blue is our next package of houses that should be online in the next coming weeks. This sort of takes us towards some of our other elements as well, which we have a child-friendly school, and in some ways it creates a heritage route. So some of these houses have obviously been reconstructed as well by other agencies. So we're working in different phases with the European Union to achieve the results we want. The child-friendly school. So just to say, this is the first child-friendly school in Mosul and potentially all of Iraq. And what makes it a child-friendly school is that through the architecture, we're able to actively reduce violence and increase academic achievement of children. So essentially, we're breaking down all the components of a typical school in Iraq, and we focus on various elements such as classroom size, ventilation, thermal comfort, organization of spaces, providing areas for active participation and learning, having dedicated classroom spaces, and essentially it's really just a good school design that is fully accessible and earthquake resistant. So just to show you the school that was fully more or less destroyed. So you can see that the houses, so the school on the left is what was existing. The picture on the right shows some historical houses that were actually held up by the school. So once the school was demolished by hand and now being cleared, we had a whole site challenge with stabilizing an entire cliff before we could even start with the reconstruction. So you can see from some of the photographs where we stand now, and the stabilizing of the cliff and backfilling has started. So hopefully in the coming weeks we'll actually be able to start laying our foundations. But some of those houses on the left that were totally unstable, we relocated some of those residents until the school is underway and everything was safe. In addition, I also have Agawat Mosque. You can see the photograph of the destruction before. So we've also gone through the process of removing all of that rubble, and we've started to stabilize a lot of the structure and the minarets, and we're now in a stage of design. We've completed all our assessments and we're in a stage of design prior to tender release. But really, I just wanted to finish with a photograph of our team in Mosul. We've a really fabulous team. that really have worked tirelessly to create the best outcome for their city. The EU team are really ensuring at every step that the voices of the people in Mosul are heard, from the local government all the way through to beneficiaries and stakeholders. So this really is their project, and the outcome, we hope, is one of quality, which, to be honest, is really thanks to the dedication and hard work of a really wonderful team that I'm really proud to work alongside. So that's it from me. If anyone has any questions related to the EU project, for me, that's fine. And also for the UAE, for Nuria and Paula. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Gemma. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen. And with that, we open up the opportunity for questions and answers. And I see Paula has kindly put some written answers against some of the questions that have already been received. Paula, would you like to add anything more using the microphone and address some of the concerns? Or are you okay with just the written text?
Sorry. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. No, I have answered in written the questions. So if there are any more questions, we are here, myself, Nuria and Gemma, are ready to answer the questions.
Thank you. So while we wait for some questions from the audience, I would like to start with a question that has been quite common in the last few webinars on the topic. And really, it's to do with what was the motivation behind holding an international competition for the rehabilitation of Al Nouri Grand Complex. Nuria, I don't know if you can shed some light on that.
Sure. It's my yeah. Paula, do you want to also jump in if you want? Well, I think it's a twofold motivation. I think the first of all, there was a discourse in the last years on Mosul and on Iraq that was really very negative, right? What we saw on the news about Iraq, about Mosul, it was certainly not positive. It was put always on the international map on the negative flip side of the events. While organizing such an event, it obviously ensures to put Mosul on the international scene with a very positive and collaborative project, where really the creativity of all architects and specialists around the world can contribute to such an important and symbolic site. And I think that is very much in line with what UNESCO aims at, what UNESCO's mandate is, and what this project specifically wants to do, which is revive the spirit of the city. However, let me say, well, at the same time, of course, this is not per se, it's not a completely rehabilitation project, meaning that, of course, as I explained, there is the expansion area, etc., etc. So there are areas that call or are suitable for a competition. And of course, an international competition not only puts Mosul on the positive in the international context, but also gives the opportunity to the best of the best to contribute with the best of the best designs to the future of the city. Finally, let me also highlight that there is always a balance that needs to be kept, and it is mandatory for the winning team to partner with an Iraqi firm to develop the detailed design. And this is important because, of course, this is a monument of Mosul and for Mosul, right? So this is not something that is forgotten, because, you know, in any event, in any competition, and for us in particular, it's very important to coordinate and co-design with local stakeholders. And this is what is going to happen, because I also want to remind the audience that the design that was requested to participants in the competition is a conceptual design, which means that we are asking for is ideas, these concepts. And now the phase where a detailed design is going to be developed, that is going to happen in partnership with an Iraqi firm. So I hope this answered the question. I don't know, Paula, maybe you want to add? No, she says no.
Yeah. I see that Paula is answering some of the questions.
Okay, she's busy. I see.
Yes. So it's best that she is typing while we ask you directly the questions. So of course, there has been some frustration. I'm paraphrasing one of the questions from the audience. And the question says, I would like to understand how you are addressing Iraqi frustration regarding this project, their exclusion and lack of consultation. So perhaps you can highlight where in the process have UNESCO been consulting Iraqi colleagues?
So yeah, and on this, I mean, I think there are two questions here. First, the Iraqi frustration. Okay, let me first start by saying that there were a set of consultations, bilateral meetings, and as I mentioned, the Joint Technical Committee is one of these mechanisms, which is composed by Moslawis, but also there was a survey done with the broader population by the University of Mosul, and they surveyed 700 people. But of course, again, the consultation will also be increased in the future during the development of the detailed design. I also want to mention that the Iraqi frustration, well, I might also want to add here that there are, of course, architecture is not, it's subjective to a point. So there are different opinions, of course, about the selection, and obviously everybody is entitled to their opinion, but I wouldn't say that probably not all Iraqis are frustrated. Also, I would like to highlight that we have also received positive feedback about the results, and a lot of excitement to work forward with UNESCO and with the winning team to actually develop a design, a detailed design that meets all the requirements and the requests and expectations of the majority of the population.
Thank you. We have a question from Mr. Aziz Al-Nasiri, who's asking, what are the major difficulties facing the rehabilitation efforts by UNESCO?
I don't know. This is a general question. Maybe
we can
Gemma.
address it to Gemma,
Yes,
particularly
Gemma,
with the houses.
because she's more specialized than me on this one. I think she would be better placed.
Really,
if that's okay.
Gemma, if I may expand the question a little bit. in one of the maps that you showed, some of the houses were rejected by the owners in terms of being involved. So I guess that is one of the difficulties. And I wonder if you can expand on it and how that affects the general area rehabilitation.
Yeah, sure. Not they weren't actually rejected by the owners. In fact, the majority, I think there was maybe one rejected it, but the majority of owners were completely on board. I suppose our main challenges have really been in terms of not actually in terms of owners or beneficiaries really. Again, it's about keeping people informed from inception phase all the way through and ensuring that owners have a voice and have a say and are able to select. So really in terms of challenges, again, just to reiterate, the presentation has really been for us due to a lot of the rubble, the circumstances, the density. And once you get to that stage, it's finding out, really ensuring that you're meeting the needs of those historic buildings as well. So we do use local contractors and local artisans and craftsmen as well. It's a completely local response. So I suppose issues have really just arisen more so from us, given the sort of context rather than from an European Union perspective. We haven't had issues from our local community and they've been fully engaged throughout the process. So for me, not so much. Maybe the UAE guys can let you know from their side. It'll be slightly different.
No. Same. I don't know if my colleagues who are also want to add, but nothing to add from my side.
Right. And another question from Mr. Aziz is asking, in addition to COVID-19, Iraq is also hit by a corruption pandemic. Is corruption impacting UNESCO's work in Mosul?
Look, we do have a very solid internal processes and checks, and we do put them in place to the best of our capacities. So this is all I have to say about it. We do have the mechanisms in place, and we do enforce them.
Right, thank you. And another question that we have is related to, it says, actually Paula is writing an answer, so I think
she's faster than you.
Yes, so we'll wait for her to write an answer to that. We will make the questions and answers available to colleagues who wish to have them. One of the questions here is saying, not any of the surveys or consultations were released to the competition bidders. Is there a reason why such information was not made available? If I may just add, I think the competition brief was one of the most comprehensive briefs that I have seen for a competition. So I don't know if you can expand on that.
So of course, there are, of course, you might know this, behind the brief, there are many studies. So not all those studies, surveys are included, but of course the results are reflected in the text. So I mean, maybe the source per se was not there, but the results and the information that was needed for the competitors was there, and the indications on how to rebuild or how to develop the concept design for example, the prayer hall was based on the agreement of the majority of the Moslawis that reported in this survey, right? And that's why it was indicated in the brief that it should be it should be in line with the building that was there before destruction in 2017. I'm not talking about the case of the minaret because, just to clarify for everybody, the minaret is not part of the competition. So that's another thing.
With that, I think Paula is answering the last question on the polls, and we have one colleague from the attendees who has their hands raised. Mr. Dr. Ali Al-Musawi, a prominent Iraqi engineer and founder of AMBS Architects. Dr. Ali, the floor is yours.
Sorry, first of all, I'm not an engineer, I'm an architect, been 53 years in this line. Anyway, it's from your summary, it looks very interesting what you're doing as a reconstruction, as a recovery, and dealing with the houses, but still never coming back to the mosque itself. And the main query is why is being done as a competition? As you said, quite right, that competition is give an opinion of the architects or the designer. But this is not it's not a matter of opinion. Each architect has got his opinion, his way of presenting things. But before that, I think this element belong to all people. You have to be very, very careful. And this iconic project, iconic building, it's like listed here in England, we call it listed number 1. Listed 1 and listed 2, it is so important. It's like a treasure. So we can't just let it give it to opinion. I give you an example in Karbala when they covered the Sahan, the courtyard. I went through Najaf and Karbala and fight and with Dr. Makia and everyone. We tried hard to stop it. There was some big move. But of course, I don't want to call it corruption, but it's been done and they are being asked, what is your opinion? I said, look, I'm just a single person architect. This project is for people. So it has to be really, really careful that the change has to, or bring it back, it has to be in line. I work with Dr. Makia with Khalafa Street Mosque, and I know how he was working, and so touchy element, how he used to change and make sure that every element there with really good concentration. I mean, I'm sorry to say, yesterday I was talking to the Mr. Deeb, the first prize. He considered the Sahan is a plaza. It's not a plaza. Sahan is a mosque, but some part of the mosque is closed, which is the building itself. The courtyard is a mosque. It's got the same quality and the same touch, and everything is part of the Sahan. I mean, it's Mecca. He compared to Mecca. Mecca is only open yard, but it still is Mecca. Is a Sahan, is a mosque, and you can see all the Pakistanis, all. I mean, I have my brother done design Mosque of Rome and Sarawak, and we are very touchy when it comes to such a unique project. It has to be really considered. But I'm very sorry that you see all these comments and those big queries about why is being done this. It's not what you're talking, what I've seen from your movie and from what your attention, it looks beautiful. But when it comes to the mosque, it's something else. The mosque, the result, the competition is completely something different issue. I mean, it's just two contradiction things. So I think I don't know what if we can ask this question, but to have a rethought. There are lots of people are really inside this and really want to participate and make sure that this iconic project come back to being rebuilt by UNESCO or by the world. It not belong to us. It's belong to all the people. So I'm really everybody, all Iraqis, architects and not architects, others are really disappointed with the result. While your work, what you're doing now on the ground, it looks marvelous. It's a very, very, give a healthy result. It is very interesting. But when it comes to the mosque, it is very disappointing. I'm sorry to say it, but this is reality. I learned to be very open and honest with the. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. I thank you very much for your comment, and please don't ever ask if you can ask a question. Of course, we're open to all the questions, and please do question and voice your opinion. I just want to clarify that the prayer hall and the minaret are going to be rebuilt to look like they were, and this was made clear in the brief. So when we talk about opinions, the opinion or the creativity is always shaped by the guidelines of the brief, some of them more, some of them less, but the guidelines of the brief, which means I just want to clarify that what is that the two historical areas or buildings are going to be restored as they were. So, and you are yourself saying that Mosul and this specific landmark is a landmark of the world. So to improve and generate a space that contributes to the community, what better than to put out there to offer the world the opportunity to contribute to a concept to be, therefore, as I said, developed into a detailed design in cooperation with an Iraqi partner. So I'm not sure if this addresses a little bit the concern. For us, this is our commitment to ensure that the results of the survey and our consultations with different stakeholders at different levels are followed, and that means that the prayer hall of Al-Nuri will follow the volumes and the shapes immediately prior to 2017, while the Al-Hadba minaret will be rebuilt as it was where it was. I'm not sure if this addresses the concern. Because I think there were many questions inside the question, so not sure.
So, of course, there has been a number of voices that many lessons need to be learned from this process. And I think there are some colleagues who have prepared papers with regards to some recommendations that they would like to send to UNESCO, send to the Iraqi government departments responsible, so that this kind of process takes care of some of these lessons. And it's good to know that in the next stage, there will be a research and development stage, or more of a development stage with the local Iraqi stakeholders. I think we're reaching the end of the webinar. We are 9 minutes over. There's one question from Mr. Michael Edwards, and it's to do with the expenditures of the project being sent and submitted to the Iraqi government and to the Ministry of Culture. I can see that Paula is answering it, but I wonder if for the...
Yes, Paula is answering. She's telling
Yes,
me.
okay. I wonder for the understanding of audience in the video, what are the requirements on UNESCO from the funding organization with regards to transparency and sharing of the expenditure with the Iraqi entities?
So is this a question for specifically for the UAE funds or in general?
I believe if we treat it in general, it will be best.
So, I mean, UNESCO, we do have our internal procedures and we report to our donors based on our agreements with them. But we, of course, have a very financial and sound financial layers of control. And we duly report to our donors with all the expenditures in very much detail. I don't know if this is the question. I'm
I
really
guess
not. I mean, what?
The question is, how much of that financial transparency is visible to the Iraqi entities, the Ministry of Culture?
Iraqi entities.
Yes, Ministry of Culture or the State Department for Antiquities, etc.
We're fully transparent on our expenditures. Do you I mean, is the question how much money are we pouring into our partners, or because I mean this is obviously an internal.
Sure. So I guess the question is quite deep, and I think
yes, I think we need another webinar to solve this one.
Well, we need to ask Mr. Michael Edwards to really send the question to the UNESCO email address that Paula has shared.
Yes, please. That's what I wanted to say. That this email is for any question related to the competition. Yes.
Yeah. With that, I want to end on a positive note to say thank you very much for the time in the presentations today, as well as the support with having all 5 competition entry winners and runner-up teams presenting as part of the London Festival of Architecture. I think there is a need for more dialogue and open discussions about how we can all contribute and support this important initiative to revive the Spirit of Mosul. And I hope that we can arrange for future events in that regards. With that, I leave the floor to Gemma and Nuria to give any final remarks that they might have.
Nuria, go ahead.
Well, I want to thank everybody and for being here. Please feel free to email us. I know there were some issues that we didn't discuss, so please do email us. We are here to answer questions to the best of our capacity.
Thank you. Gemma?
Okay, just to say thanks again for everyone attending, and sure, any questions, please do use the email address and hopefully we'll answer them at a later date.
Sure. And Gemma, we will definitely get in touch about your work in Basra as well. And also what lessons that can be learned from the rehabilitation of historic houses in Mosul to other regions in Iraq, particularly the stakeholder engagement and the engagement with owners. With that, I'd like to thank you all very much, and I'll leave the webinar open for a few minutes to allow Paula to answer some of the questions, but the webinar is now closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.